What's up, everybody? This is Ryan here, and I'm coming to you with just a impromptu live coding session. So I do apologize. I was hoping to take people along with the process of rebuilding this application quite a bit more than I did, but unfortunately, as is often the case with building or rebuilding an application with lots of new technologies and taking different approaches, I just didn't really to be perfectly honest, it wouldn't have been a great viewing experience watching me figure out, for example, that coordinator layout without motion layout and collapsing toolbar and all these things isn't really working the way it used to. Basically, Alarm Manager didn't work the way it used to, and all these different changes and new APIs that have happened recently. And a lot of this working on this application has basically been me spending a whole bunch of time figuring out, oh, I can't actually use that thing I used to use. I need to use the new thing. So anyways, I'll talk a little bit about what those things are, but the main purpose of today is I'm approaching the point where I'm basically just doing final tweaking for the user interface for the application. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of take people through the what it looks like right now, and of course it will be improved, but it's getting there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So before I start, a couple housekeeping things. It's really friggin' hot in my apartment, so I apologize for wearing the tank top, but it is what it is. It's warm in my apartment, and in my little recording studio it's even warmer. Secondly, I am about 50 hours into a 72-hour fast where I'm not eating anything, just having water and electrolytes. So I'm kind of like robotic and spacey due to that, but yeah, it is what it is. So, without further ado, let's have a quick look at the user interface. So, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time doing like lessons or anything like that. What I'm currently working on is I'm just coding out the I had a new use case for the movement feature of the application. So let me just open up the layout for it. So that's going to be Fragment Movement. So what this thing basically looks like, I'll just give everybody a preview here. So the feature is basically what's going to happen is I have an image view within a collapsible toolbar, which looks kind of like that when it's extended. And then the actual content of this particular view is contained within this thing called subview movement. And you can't see it there either because I'm showing it within fragment movement here. If I just get rid of this for a moment, you'll see what it kind of looks like if it decides to load. Oh, Android Studio, you so silly. Okay, so this is basically like the detail, the content of the particular feature. And then, so you might be wondering, okay, well, why do I have like a parallax scroll of just a friggin', this is just the icon for the application. Well, what this application is essentially is I'll basically have, it's going to be an instructional application on different exercises for improving your posture. And so I've got the application open here, so I'm just going to navigate to the, I've implemented bottom navigation, which I like that in this particular case a little bit more than navigation drawer. So this is just like dummy data, as you can see here. But this will basically be like a list of all these various movements and what targets they hit and stuff like that. And when I click on one of these things, if it doesn't crash, this is the feature I'm currently working on. So what I've done is using a motion layout and a coordinator layout and a bunch of other tools. I've made it so that this thing is a parallax image. So as I'm scrolling, the image becomes more and more visible. And so when users want to look at like an image to see how to do an exercise or a movement or a stretch, then they will have the, of course, the toolbar pulled down. And then when they want to see details, so the details I'm including like how many sets to do, if it's time-based, how many seconds to perform the exercise, what is the difficulty, just a bunch of stuff like that. And then I'll fill in the descriptions and the instructions later. So that's what I'm working on immediately. And one thing I just want to mention to people, so one of the benefits of building a modular application is you can do some interesting things. So what I just showed you, that's all like what I'll call, dummy data, just like fake data, canned data, whatever you want to call it. And so what I've done is I can basically test the front end of the application before I even actually implement the real repository where I will store the various exercises and movements. I can still test the application without having written that thing. And if I navigate to the Android data package, which is the backend package here, YouTube's screaming at me that I have low bandwidth. Great. If I navigate to the Android data package and I go to where the repositories are located, so I have implemented a database and a broadcast receiver alarm manager API thingy here, but I haven't yet implemented the movement database. But what I have done is because the front end talks to an interface and not a real database, I can actually put just like a fake class behind that interface and have the application at runtime talk to the fake class and just get fake data. So what is the effect of that? Well, what the effect of that is so here I have a fake is what this is called. It's a special name for a test double, which basically it implements the functions of the interface which the front end talks to. So whatever this the front end feature here is asking to get data from. And then I just, like I say, I return some canned data. So we're just returning, just like I say, just that kind of stuff. So this is one of the powerful reasons to build a modular application, is you can do things like that very easily. So eventually there will be a real database here, which will be supplying real data, but I just haven't gotten around to coding that yet because I've been working in the front end. So anyways, just a little tip there. So with that said and done, I'm going to go back to just doing some test-driven development here. So what I did, what I've just been working on, so like I say, eventually in my application, this icon, just the icon POS here, is the icon for the application. Eventually that will actually be like a high-resolution photo. So what I want the user to be able to do is I want them to be able to tap on the photo and then animate to the next image in a list of different images, image resources to be specific. And the reason for that is just that when you're showing someone how to do an exercise, it helps to have multiple different angles. So that's what I'm currently just building out my test-driven development cases with. So let me open that up. So I've got movement logic test. Now some people might be wondering, will this code be available open source? It will, and probably shortly. I think I'm almost at the point where I'm comfortable publishing it. But the reason why I haven't published it yet is because it's actually been quite a long process to get this thing working properly, just fiddling around with all these different APIs. But it's getting close, so I'm soon confident that publishing it won't lead to errors or people picking up mistakes. What's up, sleep? Okay. Sleep is what I was not getting a whole lot of during my fasting. I don't know what it is about long-term fasting, but I only seem to be able to sleep like 6 hours a night. Anyways, so what I was just working on was building out this particular test case here. So this is kind of test-driven development. So we're writing the test first. Actually, first I write if I need to, if what I'm writing is kind of complicated. I'll write out and basically, I believe this is what was originally meant by the term use case. It's a series of itemized steps. Use case has gone on to mean a whole bunch of different things in software architecture, but I believe I'll butcher his name, but Trygve Renskow coined the phrase, and I think this is what he kind of meant. But in any case, I like to write these things out, and then this will guide the test case, and then the test case or the test function will guide coding the actual function. And that's how test-driven development is done, or at least how I do it. So in this particular case, let me just read it out. So when the user clicks on the parallax image, that's that scrollable image thingy, we want to cycle to the next image. So that's the goal. So we're going to request a list of image resources from the view model. So the way I use view models is not like most other people. I actually use them as the name would imply. It's anything in the front end, like the presentation layer of the application that I might need to persist that I don't necessarily want to be persisting in the view or the class that coordinates both the view model and the view, which I just call a logic class. It's similar to a presenter. Here I am explaining software architecture when I'm supposed to be applying test-driven development. So yeah, then we request the current index from the view model. And then if there's a next available image, we'll get that and give it to the view. And then if the index is the last in the list, then we will go to the first index and get that. So that way, the idea is that the user can just cycle through the images on click. I was going to do a view pager, but I'm using, what's it called, the navigation library and kind of like a single activity approach. And I'm not big on nesting fragments. So what I've done so far is I have my test data, and then I have my mock responses. So when view model gets the current index, we return 0. And when view model is asked to get so the movement is it's a data model. It's just one of these things. So we've got name, targets, frequency, and the thing I care about is image resource names, so the various images for the movement. So yeah, we just return like a pre-made one, and all I'm doing is I'm basically calling some particular function on a real logic class, which is talking to all these fake classes, and seeing how it behaves using verification statements. So what I'll do next is, so I think these, just looking at my use case up here, so that's pretty much, so we request the list of image resources from the view model. Good, got that. Request the current index, and then we need to do some logic. And so this is the key here. I need to verify that in this case, the logic class is asking the view model for the next image. Or let me just write this out, and I'll probably rethink what I'm doing as I'm writing it out, which is part of the benefit of test-driven development. So we're going to say verify So first thing I want to verify that viewModel.getCurrentIndex was called. And I've been taking to adding in just exactly equals once. So this is a handy thing in mock-k, which is the mocking tool I'm using. This basically just says I want to make sure that this thing was called exactly once. I don't want it to be called more than once. So it's just kind of like an extra, oh, that was a good voice crack, kind of an extra layer of certainty. And then I also want to make sure get movement was called. And then I also want to make sure that, so this is the part I need to figure out. So if the list has next available image, get that. Let me just check the view model. So this is just something that I need to be aware of, is that I'm going to be relying on the view model to track its own index. So it's just important that I'm aware of that as I'm coding this out. So view model, its own index. That's probably not how I should do it. I probably should have the logic class figure that out, but we'll just see. It's pretty minor. So, so this is the third thing I need to verify, get image resource, which takes in an index, and I need to make sure that the index in this case should be index plus 1. So I could just type 1, because index is just coming from up here. But this basically makes it more clear about what my intent here is. I want to make sure that I'm incrementing the requested index, and when I do that, the view model itself will basically update its own current index, just so everything's working properly. Basically, my goal here is I want this view model thing, because it's lifecycle aware and safe, to store the state for the front end of the application. And then I want my logic class to actually be coordinating the view and the view model and all that stuff. And taking that approach, you kind of get the best of both worlds, from like a model view model approach and a model view presenter approach. Yeah. So the final thing is we need to make sure that that's being given to the view model. I don't know why I'm doing it that way. Let's just do Control D. And now we want to say view dot set parallax image, and we're giving it a resource. So the resource, what resource will I give it? So in this particular case, since I'm giving it fake data, I'm not actually, it doesn't really make sense to check for a particular value. Well, I do have, okay, I have different, no, I could check for, check to see if it's that. These should really be constants, to be honest. Yeah, just give me one moment here. I'm just going to turn these into constants for legibility. So we're going to say val image resource 1 doing this kind of thing, it might seem tedious, but it just helps to eliminate little clerical type errors. Then down here I can say image resource 1 2 and 3. So how's everyone doing, by the way? Feel free to ask questions. Okay. So I want to make sure it's image resource 2. And that should be everything I need to do. So the next step in test-driven development is you execute a test that should fail, but I just want to make sure that the test is compiling properly. So I'm just going to run that. Check Slack while I'm at it. Gradle is building. My computer is currently increasing the ambient temperature of this room. All right, we have a compilation error. So that'll need to be fixed before I can carry on. So we have a type mismatch in movement logic. So it's looking for a So what's going on here is I updated this function on the view to only accept a single string, but movement.imageResourceNames returns a list. So what I need to do is I just need to say that. Just give it the first image when this thing starts up. This function is called after onStart. So I can just give it the first image and that should be adequate. So I'll just try and run that again. As you can see, test-driven development is super exciting. Super exciting. That's sarcasm, by the way. Okay, there we go. So we have failing but running unit test. And that's my cue to actually go into the class that I want to write and write it out. Okay, so we're working on movement logic here. So just so everyone's up to speed, the way you apply test-driven development, I can't talk. The way you apply test-driven development is you write the test first, you write what you think is going to happen, what you expect to happen, and then you write the actual code which is supposed to do the thing you expect. And so it's kind of, if you're new to it, it seems weird and like extra work, but if you actually try it, then you'll see it allows you to basically plan your code ahead of time in a more abstract, a less detailed way, which is easier to think about because you're not worrying about the implementation, you're worrying about the end result. What's the outcome you want? And then as you're implementing the thing, the like I'll be doing now, you have these tests which will tell you if it's doing what you want it to do. So, anyways. Oh yeah, I always share these videos. My tube asks. Okay. So anyways, so what I'll do is all of my logic classes have this handle event function, which comes from a base abstract class. And they all accept some kind of sealed class, which represents different events in the front end. So the event we're coding for is on parallax image click, and I have already coded that out as movement.onImageClick, and we're not going to be calling that. And then we just jump into a new function, so we're going to say on image click. I'll usually just call it the same thing. There's no reason not to. And then we'll start coding it out. So going back to my test, I've already written out what it needs to do. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to request the It's going to request a list of movements from the view model. So we're going to say val, so a list of images. So we'll just say image list. This is live test-driven development, folks. This is how it actually works. Val image list equals view model dot get movement and dot image resource names. Now this thing's a nullable, so I'm actually at this point I'm actually certain that this value won't be null. So I'm actually just gonna throw in 2 exclamation marks, which in Kotlin basically says, listen, I know it's not null, and you know what, if it is null, then the application should crash anyway. Okay, so we've got that. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to get the index from the view model. So as you can see, all I'm doing here is I'm basically just implementing these mock responses and these verification statements. I'm just checking, okay, I need to make sure I call this, I need to make sure I call this. And all of that was figured out before I actually wrote the code that I'm writing now. So like I say, test-driven development is pretty good. Okay, so we have our image list and our index. So the next thing I want to check is, what we're going to do is we're going to say if image list dot size equals, now I always have to remember this in my head because indexes start at 0, because for some reason in programming they decided to start counting at 0. I think there is a reason for it, but yeah. Actually, I think I remember studying that in a course that I think it has something to do with the mathematics is easier. Anyways, but it doesn't make coding easier. So the size, or maybe, can I say last index? Okay, that's a little clearer. Okay, so what I want to know here, so we're getting the current index, which is basically just a value stored in the view model. And I want to know, is that the last index of the image list? So if that is the case, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's have a function update. I want to update view. Update view. Let's just say, okay, update view image. And then we're going to get image list. No, we're going to actually, that's not how I'm doing it. So how I'm doing it is we're going to say view model dot get image resource index 0. So now we're starting at, and I'm going to assert that that is not null. It's acting like it's, okay. So I'm just going to hit Alt Enter, create that function. Not sure why it's not null, but okay. Oh, because I don't think it's actually, it's not a live data. It's just an image. It's just an int, so that's why it's not null. Dir. I'll get to your question in a minute, MyTube. Okay, so yep, that's cool. Else. So this is the case if I'm actually kind of coding out the next test-driven development function that I was going to write. I do that pretty often. I'm not so much of a purist that I won't do that, which some people might frown upon. So, anyways, yeah, this thing is not paginating. Yeah, it's just a finite set of resources. There's no pagination required. So anyways, update view, I guess it depends on what you mean by pagination. Update view image. Okay, so if last index equals the current index, then we've reset the index to 0. Otherwise, we want to just get the next index. So in that case, we would call this same function. But in this case, we request the current index plus 1. So we get the next image. And then we'll just code out this function here. So we're going to say view.set parallax image with image resource. And that should be it. Let me just run the test and we'll see if that worked properly. Okay, so it was called with the wrong value. Maybe that's because, let me think about this for a minute. Something is wrong. I don't actually use the paging library. You will not catch me tightly coupling my end-to-end architecture to one front-end Android library. If you're only ever building Android apps, that kind of makes sense, but even then, I'm not a fan of the paging library for that reason. I'm not saying it's a bad library, it's poorly made, but you won't catch me using it. Same reason I don't use live data in my backend. Anyways, okay. So at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just double check to make sure my test is well formed. So what's going on here, just looking at the test, it's saying verification failed. I know you guys can't read that. Set parallax image, I am passive 2. So it was called, but arguments are not matching. So the argument, it looks like it was just called with nothing. If I'm reading this stack trace appropriately. So first thing I'll check is, let's see here. So I'm not even using this image resource names. Index plus 1. So index should start at 0, so it should be grabbing the next item. Image resource 2, just make sure my test data is proper here. Okay, and now I don't immediately see any issues with the test yet. So let's look back at the code I wrote here. So we're asking for a list of image resource names. It's pretty straightforward. We're getting the current index, which should have been initialized, or will be 0. And then we're checking, okay, is 0 equal to the last index? So that should not be called. What should be called is update view image with index plus 1. So what I'm going to do at this point, I don't immediately see the error, so I'm going to debug it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a breakpoint here, and we're just going to see, okay, what exactly is happening. Okay. So, image list size, yep, that looks fine. ¿Qué pasa? Okay, so yeah, index should be equal to 1. So I'm just going to jump to the next breakpoint. So did I forget to mock that function? Is that what's going on? Oh, that's what happened. Duh. Okay. So in this case, the error was a malformed test. So here's the thing. I have this relaxed. I should not have relaxed mock on the view model, I don't think. Yeah, I'm going to remove that. I don't mind having it on the view. So relaxed means it doesn't make an error if I don't call this function. But the result of that, this is a mock k thing in particular, is that it didn't alert me to the fact that I wasn't actually calling, or hadn't actually set up a appropriate return statement here. So this is a thing, when you're doing test-driven development, sometimes the test will be malformed. It won't actually be the code that's the problem. And so that's where the debugger really comes in handy. But here's the thing, like, okay, I figured all this stuff out. In this case, it was a malformed test. But I figured this stuff out without having to actually deploy or build. Well, it did have to build the application, but I don't have to deploy it and test it on a device or anything like that. So that's why test-driven development is faster. You can solve bugs sooner. So in this case, we say get image resource with, and I need to make sure it's index plus 1, just so we're keeping consistent. And that's going to return movement dot image resource names 1 for the appropriate index. And if I hit play, we'll see if that actually worked. I'm just going to stop the debugger because I don't need that. You are terminated. And let's see. And then I'll get to your question, MyTube. Oh yeah, we're in the green. Okay, so MyTube asks how can you test private methods? So as far as I'm aware, there's 2 approaches I'm aware of. And one of them I don't use very often. So the first approach is I will indirectly test my private functions by always, here's a cool way to think of the front-end interface of a class like a presenter or a view model. Give it one function, and you're going to call this function, you could call it handle event or something like that, or handle request. And then you give it some object. So if you're in Kotlin, a sealed class is perfect. You could use an enum, although they're not the most memory performant tools. You could even use like some kind of constant. And so this public function basically is the entry point into the private functions that you want to test. Notice how I'm doing exactly that. Publicly speaking, the only way to talk to this logic class, which is kind of like a presenter, or you could think of a view model, is the public interface to it is this function, which, let me show you the base class where this comes from, base logic. So I have this, so you could do this for a view model, you could do this for a presenter, you could do this for a controller. Give it a base class, which takes in some generic type, which for me will be a sealed class because I'm in Kotlin, and make sure that all of these different classes handle that event. Where is this thing located? Over here. And then this is the entry point to the public functions which you will be testing, or sorry, the private functions, my mistake. So this is one way to kind of test these things. So I'm still covering these functions with a single test or several tests, even though they're private. Now, there was a thing before that I used to use, and it was an annotation, and I think it was visible for testing. Yeah. Now, I haven't used this in a long time because I just haven't needed to. But you might also have luck doing that. I can't remember exactly how this works, but it's possible that it makes this private function visible and callable during testing. But I can't actually remember if that works properly. And what's up, MA? So yeah, that is how I would go about testing private functions should I need to. Okay, so we got that. That test is working properly. Dogs barking in the background. And then I'm going to code out the next case. So this is the case where we have a next image. So on parallax image click has next. And then we also have the case where we're at the end of the list and the index matches the last index of the list, and then we want to go back to 0. We want to start from the first image again, and that way the user can cycle through the images. So in that particular case, I'm actually just going to copy and paste this whole friggin' thing, because there's no sense just rewriting it all. And I'm going to make sure that I make these things appropriate. So I know that from my test image, my test data, my test movement, it has 3 items. So the final index will be 2. So we're just going to fix that. And as you can see here, all I've had to do is, since I've defined this constant up here, and with the exception of like +1 and that, these are all constants. It's easier for me to just change the data right away. So this is the value of using these constants, and like the thing I did up here, if I watch someone doing that like as a beginner programmer, I'd probably think like, oh, come on, what's the point of doing that? But that is exactly the point, is that now I can change things in one place. I'm just dropping knowledge bombs left and right here. Anyways. Yeah, no worries, MyTube. MyTube says, thank you for the answer. No problem. Anyways. Okay, so index 2. So we get the current index, and it should be the last one. We get the current movement. That's fine. That can stay the same. And then we want to get image resource, but we don't want to say index +1 because that would be an array index out of bounds exception. So instead we want to say 0. Now I actually configured the view model to handle array index out of bound situations, but we don't necessarily know that in this case, so I'm going to cover that in the test. And then I want to make sure that we return the first index, which is denoted by 0. Okay, and then I want to make sure again, so get image resource 0, and then this is going to be image resource 1 is the ultimate result. So I think that's everything I need to do. I'm just going to execute that function, and we'll see. Oh yeah, I'm in the green, baby. Making it rain. Making it rain with my Canadian money. $5 bills. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it gets boring programming, so I try to make it fun sometimes. Also, as I mentioned before, I am like 54 hours or 53 hours into an extended fast, so I'm a little crazy today. Okay, so this is the front-end behavior that I want. Now what I'll do is I'm going to code the fragment, which will be implementing this behavior. I don't actually build my fragments with TestDriven Development because they're tightly coupled to the UI and frameworks and stuff like that. And as you can see here, I kind of indirectly test the view by verifying what the logic class does. So all the view's functions, for the most part, are really simple. And this is my secret way of getting away from having to use espresso and things like that, is to apply passive view or a humble object. Now the cost of this is that sometimes I'm more susceptible to little typing errors in the fragment, but because the fragment doesn't typically have giant functions, they're typically really easy to write. And when something goes wrong, I usually can catch it pretty quickly. So, what I need to do is set up an on-click listener to actually publish the events from the when the user clicks on the parallax image. So I believe that thing's called IMV movement. Yep. Dot set on click listener. This is real complicated stuff here, setting on click listeners. And when that happens, I'm going to say logic dot handle event movement event dot on image click, and that's that entry point that I showed everybody earlier, right there. Okay, and then we need let's just see if my set image thingy, set parallax image is proper. Yeah, that should work. Okay. That's actually working. So what I'm going to do now, or at least it appears to be working. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to update my fake. So if you don't know what a fake is, it's basically like it's a fake class that returns data that I want it to return. So I'm going to open movement database, I think it's called, something like that. Yeah, movement database implement. I can't talk. Impl. And so what I'm going to do, currently it just returns this image resource. I'm going to supply a couple. So I'm actually going to steal these up here. By the way, I gotta pause for a moment. So I was getting this really annoying error in the front end. It wasn't working properly with let me just show you really quickly. So this is just a list of movements. I have to fix this user interface. It's still in kind of beta stages, but basically these little icons that you can barely see represent different body parts. Passive hang is an exercise where you just hang from a bar. And those icons weren't working properly, so I was trying to figure out, like, why aren't they updating properly? So I was looking through my code, trying to find the place where it was screwing up, and I wasn't finding the issue. And then finally I figured out what the actual error was, is that I had written this, basically. I'll just show you really quickly. There we go. Yeah, I just had one giant long string pointing to there. I can assure you there is no resource called icy chest, icy shoulders. So yeah, that's just some of the dumb shit you do as a programmer, you know. Just a little clerical error. So anyways, like I said before, I'm going to copy these and use them. I'm not going to use all of them. And we'll do a quick test here. So these are things that actually do exist in resources. So I'm going to see if I can get the image view to work properly. Just give me 1 minute. I need to grab my USB debugging cable. I will be back in literally like 15 seconds. Okay, I lied. It was more like 5 seconds. Oh, this is going to be awkward. So I have my webcam and keyboard are plugged into my only front USB ports. So just give me a minute. Oh, that was an ordeal. Okay. Okay, and so what I'll do now, so I'm going to deploy the application to my device, and my computer's probably going to lag. So just be aware of that. Good old Nexus 5X. And it's not registering. Why is it not registering? What the hell? This is annoying. Okay, I don't know why. Yeah, it's like my phone's just not registering that it's plugged into a USB. Okay. Probably what happened is I think I just accidentally. So the thing is, I'm having to reach behind my tower and just fondle for the USB, and I think what just happened is I think I accidentally plugged it into the HDMI port or something like that. So that was a bit odd, but okay. Anyways, let's launch this thing. Now I've got developer options enabled. It was just plugged into the wrong thing. Okay, Gradle build is running. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it is launched, and then I'm going to navigate to movements. I don't know why the theme is screwed up. I'm going to click on POS. Okay, so what I'm looking for is if I tap the big POS on there, hopefully it'll change to a different image. And it did. Oh yeah. So these won't be the actual images I'll be using, but they're just test images. And as you can see, that is working. See if I can get it to crash. Oh, no. So the thing I'm wondering about, I'm wondering if I have to I'm wondering how this will work as I'm scrolling the parallax. So I'm going to scroll up a bit and then tap it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's doing its thing. Okay, looks like I can. Yeah, so this is one thing I was wondering about. So should I disable the image as it's either parallaxing or it's in the up state of the parallax, as you can see? I don't know, to be honest, because I don't really care that much if the user accidentally changes the image. I'm noticing though it shouldn't. It's kind of visible. I don't know if you guys can see that very clearly, but there's just a little bit that's visible in there of the image. I don't really want that going on, so that'll have to get fixed. Anyways, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to I want this change to be animated. Right now I just hit the button and it changes the image. I want this to actually be animated properly, so I will work on that next, which is just like a front end thing. That's cool though. Glad that's working. It's been one of those projects where everything is kind of taking forever, so it's nice when things go smoothly. Anyways, So Maiko Serre has, I believe, a comment, which I'm not totally grasping what you're saying. Programming in Kotlin coming from Java could be considered a fast. Oh, you mean like fasting, like I was talking about fasting earlier. Yeah, I kind of, I see what, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Absolutely. Because holy crap, like, your code feels so bloated when you're coding in Java. And this is coming from someone who spent, like, 4 years, 3 or 4 years coding in Java, between 3 and 4 years coding in Java, and then transitioning to Kotlin. And I still love Java, but compared to Kotlin, I'll pick Kotlin. It's I get a lot of questions about that. Anyway, so back to coding. So what I want to do now is I want to animate the changes to my image view. So that's going to take place in the fragment. And I already have some animations worked out. Let me just close that. We don't need that open. And so I'll just kind of pick whichever ones I want. And I don't actually remember how to set the animations because I fiddled around with that ages ago. So I need to add, let me just pull up some code. Just give me a minute here. Maybe the old version has the code. There's a way to easily apply an animation just before changing an image, and that's what I'm looking for. Where's the old version of this thing? So I'm just looking through the repository. All right, check this. This is what it's like. So this was the project where I learned Dagger 2. I just want everyone to check this out. About to refactor Dagger 2 for the 43rd time. Ryan K., circa April 12th, 2017. Man, learning Dagger 2 was a pain in the ass. Okay, so I don't... So what I'm looking for is, in an older version of this application, it still had movements, and that does not appear to be the case for that commit. Where's history? I just lost where I was here. No. Commits. Okay. If it's not visible to the user, then it should not be changed. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, MyTube. Okay, I guess maybe it was in like an old version. I'm just gonna hide my my GitHub for a minute and see. Do I have like the old version of PostTrainer or something on here? Evidently not. Okay, whatever. Well, I'm just gonna have to Google it then. Animate image view, Android. I will consult the Oracle, the Google. Now the problem is I'll probably find some way to do it from like 1,000 years ago. Okay, I think I've got what I need here. Okay, so what I'm trying to do, I just want to animate the change. I can't remember how to do this properly. See, this is the kind of thing, like I'm all about the software architecture and problem domain analysis and but when it comes to remembering how to do fiddly little animation things, I basically forget them as soon as I learn them. Okay, so it looks like what we're doing. Okay, so here I'll zoom in a little so you can critique me. Okay, so we're gonna say let's do the slide in right for lack of anim slide in right. We'll call it that. Equals animation utils dot load animation. It's probably deprecated, knowing my luck. So context, we'll do get. Can I just say context in here? And then herp derp r.anim.slide in right. So the thing I don't remember is I can't remember if this thing if you set the image and then you call the start animation or what. Maybe someone else in the chat remembers. Hey, what's up, Jamie? Yeah. Yeah, I could disable it. I'm just lazy. I probably should. Okay, so I am movement. Okay, let's look up. See, the thing is, I want it to animate when I change the friggin' drawable. I don't want it to fire before then. Okay, let me just. Okay, animate, image view, switch. I know there's a thing called an image switcher which you can use, but I just didn't want to bother using that because it requires a bunch of boilerplate. Maybe I should use the image switcher. This is a problem when you're looking at ancient code. Okay, so loading it loads it into the, yeah. Oh, okay. David Cruz is mentioning a set animation listener. I will look into that. The problem, I'm basically trying to just animate the change of an image view without having to mess around with some random animation library. I just want it to be really quick and simple. So one way to do that I know is to use an image switcher, but I was just trying to get away with not doing that, even though it might end up being easier at this point. Very exciting stuff. Let me check out that link. Okay, let me just Google animation listener so I understand exactly how it works. Because I want it to animate the new image, of course. Okay, animation listener. Okay, well, see, the thing I'm trying to figure out here is where exactly do I call set image resource while I'm animating the thing, because I don't want it to animate the old image. And it's not especially clear in the documentation here. So I'm going to assume on animation start occurs just before it actually starts animating. Or maybe, so what I could do, I could animate it out and then animate it back in. That could work. Yeah, why don't I do that? Okay, so okay, here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna say, I'm not sure how well this is gonna work, but we're shooting from the hip today. Okay, so we're gonna say anim fade out equals animation utils dot load animation. So of course this will be pointless when it's first run because we'll just be animating out an image that doesn't exist. Dot anim dot fade out, right? Okay, whatever. And then we call imv movement dot start animation anim fade out. Okay, and then we set the image. I have no idea if this is going to work properly, but we're just going to see. And then we set the image resource, and then we call start animation. And these things should probably sit outside of the scope of this particular function. Okay, so, and this one becomes anim slide right in. Okay, I'm just gonna test that. I don't actually know if it's gonna work properly, but let's just test that. That seems like a simpler thing. Basically, we're reaching. I'm reaching the point in this project where I'm kind of just. I'm not trying to cut corners too hard, but I am trying to cut a few corners. Okay, let's just test it out. Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's working. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Molto bene, signore. All right, I'm happy with that. So I got a to-do list up on my whiteboard here. Animate toolbar image on touch. That is done. Everyone can see how big my nose is. Animate navigation transitions next. So we'll work on doing some transitions from. So this is one part of the navigation library that I do quite like. I love being able to specify the enter and exit transitions. In navigation here. So they have some defaults. I'm not sure if I'll be able to use auto transition. So for those who are not familiar, this is the navigation graph editor. It's just loading. There we go. Taking its sweet time. And these are the different screens of the application. There will be a couple more. I'll be adding a video player feature. And I still need to do lots of tweaking on the user interface here. This is just beta level. Okay, so one of the things we can do is we can, for different transitions, set animations. And there's some default ones. I think I'll probably just, let me just see what the defaults look like. So I'm going to animate between, let's see, so between, not that one. No, I don't want to click on that one. That's annoying. There we go. So enter, let's just, so I'm not actually, I'm assuming that has to do with popping the back stack. So enter is going to be, let's just try the defaults out. Default enter, default exit. And then I'll set the same going from the movement list feature back to this feature over here. To a reminder list. Okay, yep. Enter and exit. So I just want to see what these look like. See if they're suitable for a beta version of an application. Nope. No, that looks like garbage. I don't even see what the point is. Okay, I'm not going to do that then. Okay, so let's say... Let's do... So for enter, we'll do slide in left. Slide exit will be slide out right. We'll see if this works any better. Oh, come on, you stupid thing. There we go. Slide. I already forgot what I did before. Slide. Enter is slide in left. Slide out right. Okay, let's just try that. Rob Gass says some very flattering words. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, it still looks janky as fuck. Pardon my language. Well, it's tolerable. What I'll have to do, I'll have to look into. I haven't actually looked at the latest APIs for animating transitions and stuff like that, so I'll have to do that because it doesn't look great. It is kind of sliding in and out there, but not really. It doesn't look very good, to be honest. All right. So there's lots of other things to work on. So I can work on user interface for the movement list. So as you can see here, this needs a little bit of tweaking. I can work on the user interface for the thing we were looking at earlier, the movements up here. And the reminder list, I want to update that a little bit. So first thing, I don't think I'll stream for too much longer, but the first thing I want to do is, as you can see here, the bottom navigation, sorry, let me go into full camhor mode here. The bottom navigation looks okay in this feature, but when I switch to the next feature, it does not look okay at all. And one of the things isn't even visible. So that's one thing I will fix straight away. And I don't think I'll do... I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bottom navigation background as my accent color. I don't know. Let me just fiddle around a little bit with this. So bottom navigation. By the way, I ended up not doing... I ended up having to basically put the... so the features that have the bottom navigation, each individual fragment has its own bottom navigation widget. And this is something I run into very often. Let me just pull up the features here. And even settings. And I'll have to create a theme for it. So something I run into very often is I'll have a situation where I'll have something, so say for example, in an ideal situation, I wouldn't actually have this pretty much the same, more or less, navigation view in every individual fragment. What I would like to do is I would like to have this as part of the base activity. Sorry, there's loud vehicles outside. I would like to have this as part of the base activity that all of these fragments kind of move through, because it is kind of like a single activity architecture, more or less. I'm using navigation. And as you can see, it's just showing a fragment here. So I would like to have it shared, but the problem with doing that I ran into right away is then all of a sudden I'm having to add a bunch of logic into my activities to manage the state of these various things and the state of the bottom navigation drawer and this, that, and the other. And then immediately it's just like, well, you know what? It's actually just simpler and safer for me to handle each individual view, which actually requires the navigation bottom bar, because not all of them use it. So then again, I'm having to worry about animating that thing away in the activity. And basically, whatever I'm doing in Android, I'm trying not to put code in my activities. On rare occasion, I'll have a feature, say like a movie player feature, where it will make sense to basically build like a God activity because you're just tightly coupled to frameworks and stuff like that. So on occasion, I will break that rule. But for the most part, I pretty much want almost no code in my activities. And so when you're dealing with things like, okay, I've got the navigation library and I need that to work properly with this bottom navigation. Well, I tried setting it up with the bottom navigation with the navigation library, and I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted it to. So then I finally just said, you know what, screw it. Let's just put the friggin' view in every fragment which needs it, and then I'll just handle it like any other view. And just for the people watching this, I find very often that's, you know, the cost of doing this is that I have some repetitive code in each fragment. Like we've got our bottom navigation view here, we've got one here, and then we've got one in fragment settings. But at the end of the day, it was way easier than handling it the way that was kind of suggested. So yeah, anyways, that's my little rant. Okay, so what we're going to do is I want to theme this thing. So I'm just going to check out how to do that. Bottom navigation theme. Okay, so I can just set a background on it, so that's easy enough. Let's start with, let's try color accent. I would like to try color accent. I will practice accent. Why is not update? Okay, so that's not great. I think it needs to be a brighter color than that. So either I make it all... what's my background color? Oh, it is just plain white. How about mint green? What does that look like? No. Not quite. Okay, for now we're just going to make it white. Okay. I should see that. Okay, this is a dumb thing to do. Let's make a style for it so I'm not changing it in 3 places every time. That is dumb. So let's, we got containers, buttons, toolbars, whatever. I'm going to treat this thing as an image button, and we're going to say style. Name will be bottom bar, and item background color, at color / white, and then in each thing we're going to add style bottom bar. Let me get rid of that there. Add that into each individual fragment, because I'll probably be adding more stuff. I'm quite sure I'll be tweaking this more later. But now I'm only having to tweak it in one place, and I should still get the same effect. So I'm just going to deploy and see how that looks. By the way, while that's going on, so I'll ramble. This is outside of the context of programming, but it might make you a better programmer. I've been messing around with intermittent fasting and 1 meal a day. Oh, I see an error. So I need to set which bottom bar icon is highlighted. So that's one thing. I've been messing around with intermittent fasting and doing 1 meal a day. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm on, well, at this point, about hour 52 of a 72-hour fast, roughly. And it's a very interesting experience, especially coming from someone like me who I really love my food. I wonder if, can I I just want to see if there's a way to set the selected. Sorry, just give me a minute. I just want to see if I can set that declaratively. I don't think so, but I'm just going to try. Highlighted. Let me look at the documentation. That's a smarter way of doing this. So anyways, as I was saying, so I was overweight as a kid. I was a chubby little boy, and I love food. So it's really interesting to like get into doing 1 meal a day and intermittent fasting and OMAD and all that stuff and extended fasting. Bottom navigation view. Where's bottom navigation view? It's a really interesting feeling when you're doing the fasting. Like for me, usually the second day sucks. Like from 24 hours into the fast until 48 hours, close to where I'm at. Usually that's like the tricky time. That's when I'm trying to like talk myself out of doing the fasting. You don't need to go longer than 48 hours. Just do just do 48 hours. Don't do the full 72. And then you kind of have these mental apparitions going on. Okay, I'm going to shut up for a minute and focus on coding. So I just wanted to see, can I in XML set the selected item? And it doesn't look like I can. Yeah, that's okay. I can encode, so that's fine. Let's just do that really quickly in Kotlin. So let's go to, I'll pull up each fragment. Come on, brain, you can do this. Fragment. I'm getting a little tired, people, so I apologize if my brain is slowing down. So movement list fragment. Reminder list fragment, and I don't think I've coded settings fragment at all. Yeah, it's basically empty, so I won't bother with that yet. Anyway, so as I was saying, in a way, the fasting is awful. Like I'm 52 hours in here. In a way, I kind of just feel like I'm dying slowly. But there's also a whole bunch of really great benefits to it. Like my mental clarity is super high because I'm producing ketones. So my focus is on point. And I don't have hunger pains, which is cool. Like I think about food a lot, but I don't actually get the hunger pains when I'm doing the extended fasting. So that's kind of nice. So on start... so what I'm going to do is on start, I'm going to make sure I set the appropriate selected item. So what we're going to do, this is movement list fragments. So we're going to say bottom nav movements dot selected item. That's not what I want. Set selected. This is not what I was looking at. Set selected item ID. Do I not have, so selected item, oh, I see, okay, I get it. The Kotlin syntax with its blazing efficiency was confusing me a little bit. Okay, so set selected item ID, is that going to be, let me open up the nav menu here. Okay, so it's just going to be plain old r.id. What did I call these things? Not great names. So this is in the movement feature, so this will be movements. Okay. And I don't need to bother with the reminder list because it's just the first item. It'll be selected automatically. So let's just see if that worked. Anyways, to continue rambling about fasting, another benefit is like when you finally get through your fast, if you do like an extended fast, your willpower will be like through the roof. Like things that used to be difficult for you, you'll just be really on task. But of course, that's temporary. Okay, and yeah, that's working properly. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually transition between the screens properly, but at the very least I've got that working all right. I think what I'll do, I'm just going to build out the settings feature, which doesn't really actually have much going on, so that won't take long. I'm probably not even going to do like a model view presenter thing with it. It'll just be probably a fragment for the beta version of the application. So let me open that up. Settings fragment. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run a quick commercial break and get a drink. And then, so if anyone has any questions so far, feel free to let me know. And I will be back in just a moment. And we're back. Okay. So let's start by inflating the appropriate view. So this is going to be override fun on create view, return inflator dot inflate, and we'll do, what do you need? You need the layout to inflate, r.layout.settings, or it's probably called fragment settings. And what else does it need? Let me just pull up. Let's do movement fragment. Okay, container and attach root false. Okay, that's simple enough. That thing is so confusing to explain, this attached to root false, because I was trying to explain this during one live stream, and the problem with this thing is that it ultimately, when you read this at face value, attached to root, you assume that like if you give false, then the fragment won't actually be attached to the view hierarchy properly, but that's totally not what happens. It doesn't automatically in this case, whereas if you set it to true, you're basically like committing to attaching it yourself for some case. So it's really counterintuitive. I can't even remember. So yeah, so we're inflating fragment settings. I'm gonna, again, let's override onStart. And again, we're just gonna set that thing I literally just did, movement list fragment. And I'll have to import the appropriate synthetic layout, so this will actually be fragment settings. And this will not be, this will be bottom nav settings, and then I'll just get rid of, yeah, it already fixed that import. Okay. Let's see what that looks like. Currently, the settings feature just displays information. You can't actually like set things with it, so that might actually be all I need to do there for now. Yeah, that's basically it. That's all it looks like. I'm going to remove it's got a little back icon, which I'm going to remove because it doesn't do anything. But this basically just has social media links, the nav bar, and yeah, all that crap. So let me open up the layout, fragment, settings. And we shall remove the... Oh, sorry, I'm in full webcam mode here. We're just going to remove that. Div settings 1. We can actually get rid of that too. Tie that to the top of parent. Okay. That's looking good. Good to know. Okay, that's another item off the to-do list. Settings, UI. I guess I'll add in some more navigation transitions, and then I'll probably call it a day there. Okay, nav graph. Okay, so for all of these ones, we'll do that same slide in left, slide out right. So let's set that up on here, enter. Slide in left, slide out right. And for this one, oh, they need to work on the click boxes for these arrows. It's been kind of annoying. Okay. And yeah, this one too, might as well. Slide in left, slide out right. Okay, I think that's all of those ones, or maybe I'm missing there. Oh, that should be good. Then we'll do something different for animating the detail views. So again, I am not able to click on this arrow even though it's plainly visible. So if I had one gripe about the navigation editor here, that's kind of annoying. Okay, so this one here. So we're going from a list view to a detail view. So how do I want to animate that? I wonder what scale would look like. Let's do scale up, scale down. All right, again, I'm just going to play test that right away. Okay. Yeah, it just looks really janky. Janky is a technical term for like just sudden and jarring, and I wonder if it has to do with my animations. Maybe the duration is too fast. That's not helping. I'm gonna try slowing it down to maybe 300 milliseconds. Scale down. Just see if that looks a little better. Well, it looks less janky. Yeah, that kind of did the trick. I wonder if that's the same for the other animations then. Maybe that's why they're looking so crappy. So we had slide and left. Oh, these things are already at a higher duration. Okay. I should be using that same... I didn't even remember making this this thing here, activity transition length. Let's just set that for the duration on scale up and scale down. So yeah, I'm happy with that. That looks okay. All right, well, I'm going to call it a day in a couple minutes. I'll just stick around for final questions and comments if anyone has any, and then after that I'm going to take a break, and then I'll probably start coding again, except off camera, because as fun as it is to ramble and code at the same time, it's not easy. But hopefully people learned a bit. I promise I will make more recorded content soon. I've been just having to spend a ton of time coding lately, so I just haven't had time to make the tutorials because they tend to take a long time to make. But next month should be more content-oriented stuff for my channel. It's been a while since I published an application, so I just wanted to, like a commercial application. I published that Space Notes demo application, but yeah, looking to actually publish a real application now. So, anyways, still 52 hours into my 72-hour fast experiment, and I tell you, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's important not to go crazy when you're breaking a fast. Like, don't eat a huge meal, but yeah, I've got a real nice omelet planned. So, yeah. So, anyways, thank you for watching, everyone. As always, I think I forgot to add the link in this particular live stream, but if you would like help from not just me, but a developer community with people of all skill levels, then do consider joining our Slack channel. I have a course on Kotlin, introductory Kotlin and Android, so do consider checking that out on Udemy. And if you'd like to basically start coding applications like I do. And yeah, that's basically it. Robert Petras asks, what do I think about the Swift UI. I've never worked with it, so I have no thoughts on it. Sorry, I can't give you a good answer on that because I haven't used it. But yeah, worth a try anyway. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Hopefully you have a good, what day is it? Friday evening, morning, or afternoon, or maybe it's even Saturday morning for you. But in any case, happy coding and peace out.